Hurricane Irma has intensified rapidly into now a Category 5 storm. That means it is packing winds of 175 miles per hour. Hurricane warnings are up for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. This monster storm is now posing a major threat to millions of people in Florida. So let's get ready
to get the track of the storm right over some of those islands. And if you do, the winds at 175 will be devastating. As we move it along to the DR and to Haiti, there's a lot of mountainous areas here. That may tear the storm up a little bit. But notice what happened at the 8 o'clock advisory. This number at 5 o'clock said the storm in the Florida Straits somewhere around 130. Now it says 150. So that's even more impressive because the storm back here is more impressive. There are mountains in here, and those mountains will catch some of the rain. It will tear the storm up just a little bit. So this track, although not quite set in stone, is certainly pretty, obvious where this thing probably goes. The storm size may still be significantly different from where we are now. Let me just say this. If you're retired in South Florida and you have kids in Michigan, time to go visit.
Now, we do have another system out in the Atlantic. It was a tropical storm earlier this morning, but the latest update from the National Hurricane Center now has Irma as a Category 2 hurricane. It is moving off to the west and is forecast to be a major hurricane by tomorrow and early next week, threatening the eastern parts of the Caribbean. And our computer models after that pretty spread out as to where the storm goes afterward. The good news is only 10 to 15% of hurricanes where Irma is right now hit the United States. Dana?
Jeff Jamison from KTVT, our Dallas station. Thank you.
The system is extremely dangerous. It's moving west-northwestward at 16 miles an hour, still a Category 5. And on that track, computer models take it due west-northwestward for several days before turning over the weekend. Now, the models don't control the weather. It's the attempt to keep up with what's going on, calculate it, and regenerate another projection.
They are looking at one of the worst hurricane strikes in more than a decade, possibly since the early 90s when Andrew came ashore. But it will still maintain, according to the latest track from the National Hurricane Center. I just got this in a few seconds before we came on the air. So it'll stay a Category 5 hurricane through tomorrow night.
Of course, Irma remains a primary concern as it continues to head towards very densely populated areas. Now, the entire storm is dangerous, but the highest storm surge and the strongest winds are in the northern half, in particular the northern quarter. If you were to cut this like a clock, between noon and 3 is usually where you see the most damaging winds and the highest storm surge. I mentioned how large this storm is. It's over 530 miles across. Here's an updated look at the forecast. It looks to just kiss the northern part of Cuba, and then Saturday at 2 p.m. forecast to still have 155 mile per hour sustained winds and make that northerly turn when it is within 60 miles from the Keys. It is expected to now re-intensify to Category 5 strength, then continue its trek up to the north. I've said this all week. When you see this cone, and in particular this red line in the center, I think that can confuse folks. That doesn't mean that's where the center of Irma will be. The center of Irma can be anywhere within this cone. And where that center moves, it will move the greatest impacts with it. Now, that being said, hurricane force winds extend 70 miles out from the center, and at its widest point, Florida is roughly 140 miles across. So that means the entire state will likely endure hurricane force winds for the entire weekend. Now, as it crosses the border into Georgia Monday afternoon around lunchtime, it will weaken to tropical storm strength, 60 miles per hour.
It is going to make a landfall in Florida, and that's where it's headed throughout the day today. Category 4 hurricane riding along the coast, and it makes that northward turn, impacting the Florida Keys. Already tropical storm force conditions overtaking the area this morning. Potential landfall in the Florida Keys as we go towards tonight and into the day tomorrow, slowly pushing its way, that eye right along southwest Florida. There will be maximum sustained winds at that point, forecasted to be around 150 miles an hour still, which is still a very dangerous, catastrophic Category 4 hurricane.